This is the Slick Podcast Deep Explorer, receiving you loud and clear, Limpet. Go ahead.
We're approaching you from 10 degrees off your starboard side. I request that you move the Deep Explorer away once we make our approach. As Mr. Murphy has asked for a preliminary flyover the ancient shiny thing before we deploy the team. Received?
Received, understood, and complying now. Deep Explorer out. Helm.
Aye, sir.
Let's make some room for the Limpet. Reverse our course 200 metres aft and keep our trim.
Aye, aye, sir. Reversing our position 200 metres. Holding our trim.
Chief, on helm's mark. All engines stop and stations to secure.
Aye, aye, sir. All stop and standing by.
Now approaching in 3, 2, 1, and mark.
All stop. Rudder midship.
All stations to secure.
All stations reporting secure, sir.
Very good, Chief. This is the Slick Podcast Deep Explorer to the Limpet. Let's get the ball rolling on this one. Over to you.
You have tuned in for a Slick Podcast. I'm here to seek the truth. Live from Scotland around the UK. The one and only Slick Podcast. Enjoy the show. Can I ask important questions? No matter how bizarre the truth might be. Tune in for Slick Podcast, keeping it real, keeping it groovy.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, or a very good day to you when and wherever you're listening from. And a very warm welcome to the show. I'm your host, Simon Laurie King. Our world is a beautiful place. Of that, I have no doubt. But is it the way most of us are taught it to be? A globe. Coming up on today's show, we are very lucky to have David Weiss joining us. Flat Earth Dave, as he is known online, hails from the east coast of the United States, where he was born and raised. He began his Flat Earth journey when he left his very lucrative corporate job and started his own company. As a hobby, he hosted a conspiracy comedy show at the NYC Comedy Club for 3 years. After many fans urged that he look at what he considered to be a ridiculous notion called Flat Earth, he sought out to disprove this conspiracy and put it to bed once and for all. It was then that he discovered that Flat Earth was in fact the true Earth and hasn't looked back. He is now on a mission to wake up the world to Flat Earth because it is the most important topic today, especially in the light of today's current political and social climate. David has appeared on a vast amount of top profile shows, including InfoWars with Alex Jones, Chris Jericho's podcast, We the People Radio, Morning Talk Radio in New York, Toronto, Vancouver, South Africa, Australia, and the list goes on. He's been interviewed across the world from the UK to New Zealand and most places in between. And not forgetting to add to that already impressive list, the SLK podcast here in sunny Scotland. David has his own show also, the Flat Earth Podcast, with a massive following, so be sure to check that out. I am really excited about this interview that promises to be a very interesting cast, so without further delay, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome David Weiss to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Simon. Glad to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Let's get the ball rolling on this one. Absolutely no pun intended. Just something that I always say at the commencement of my show. There are many things one learns as an adult. I can only with authority speak for myself, of course. As an example, facts I have learned about our past history, facts of science that the whole world swears to be true. These facts, not all but certainly some, and especially lately, have interfered, severely dented, and in some cases threatened to completely shatter the picture thus far that I have about our world. This very same disinformation that was fed to me by others over a lifetime thus far, designed maybe to stunt my intelligence or castrate my questioning has actually had the opposite effect. Now, that having been said, some of my listeners would have definitely heard of you. And I suspect there are quite a few of your own massive following listening in today. And to all of you, welcome to the show. But for the benefit of the listeners who have not followed your podcast or the countless other interviews you have given, could you give us a brief overview of how you transitioned from absolutely not accepting the flat earth suggestion as it would have been back then to you becoming one of the most prolific advocates of this revelation online today?
Yeah, everybody that is in Flat Earth has the exact same story. You heard about it. You laughed at the person that mentioned it. You probably ridiculed them. You might even have gotten angry at them. And then, for whatever reason, some reason, you looked into it. And most of us look in with a closed mind, just saying, I'm just going to prove how stupid this is and how stupid you are for even mentioning it to me. And only then, when you look, do you see that, oh my God, everything I've known my entire life is a lie. And some people have egos that won't allow them to see that. The quote from Crow 777 is not ego. Belief is the enemy of knowing. And then I added, and ego is the protector of belief. So we're trained from, when we were infants, before we could even talk, that the earth is a globe. And when you start to see all of the globe programming in every children's show, every movie, every book, school, everything, you're like, wow, this is like the number one topic out there to program people. And by the end of this, for those of you that are listening, you're gonna throw your hands up and say, well, why would they lie? We'll get into that by the end of the show. So that's basically it. How and then once you see it, you can't unsee it. And the way the correlation I make, or the analogy, is the movie The Matrix, the first one. If you look at Neo at the beginning of the movie, he's plugged into the Matrix. He doesn't know who he is, where he is, what he is, what's going on. He's depressed. He's stuck in his apartment. He's doing his little business. He just doesn't know what's going on. He's a slave in the Matrix. And then look at Neo at the end of the movie, when he's completely unplugged and he knows who he is. He knows the power of his mind, and he's taken back his power, essentially. That's what Flat Earth does to you. It unplugs you from the heliocentric matrix, which is a prison for your mind. And once you understand that, and once you see it, you'll wonder, how the hell did I ever believe that nonsense before?
Because as I said at the intro, you still are a successful businessman, but you'd left that. It's not like you were living in your mum's apartment and you thought, I just need something to do. You still are a valued member of society. You pay your taxes. You're a successful businessman, but you have an absolute passion for this.
It's because, people say, with all the nonsense that's going on in the world right now, all of the nonsense that's going on in the world, why the hell does the shape of the earth matter? Why are you focusing on this? And the truth is, everything is related to this. Everything sits on the flat earth. Everything sits on who you know, who you believe you are, what power you understand that you have. And the elite want us spinning out of control through infinite space, insignificant in a godless or distant God universe. They don't want us to know that we're at the center of creation, that we have complete and total control over our freedoms. They want us to believe that they have power over us, and that's absolutely true if you believe it. The only power anyone has over you is in your imagination. And they don't want us to know any of the real information out there that would challenge their authority. If everybody woke up to Flat Earth tomorrow, all governments would fold, all universities would fold, and that's just the beginning of the changes that would happen on this world. So, why does it matter? The truth is, none of this nonsense, from wars to health tyranny, would be able to happen if people understood who they were, where they were, and what this place was. And that all of the fear, false evidence appearing real, that they spew at us on the news is complete and total nonsense.
Followed your podcast for a long, long time now. And at first, with a smile, I thought, well, I could maybe out-argue this guy. It's not about argument. I'm not going to say whether I'm sold or not on this. I needed you on this podcast, and I'm really glad you've come. One of the points I had, I've seen ships disappear over the ocean horizon, which would indicate that they are below the observable Earth curvature sightline. But, and here's the thing, conflictingly, I have also read about the Bedford Level experiment and many others of such a nature. This particular experiment, conducted by Samuel Burley Robotham in 1838, measured a 6-mile length of canal at a water's level, and he found absolutely no curvature whatsoever. But in 1870, Alfred Russel Wallace disproved Rowbotham's findings by, and I quote, adjusting Rowbotham's methods to avoid the effects of atmospheric refraction, end quote. What is atmospheric refraction, and does it affect a straight line or a curve? And secondly, what are your findings when it comes to water curvature when talking about the Earth's horizon? Is it or isn't it a thing?
So that's the number one thing. People go boats over the horizon. And then for those of you that remember your school, the next argument you come up with, well, the Greeks knew 2,000 years ago, Aristophanes figured it out with sticks and shadows. And then the next thing they say is if the Earth was flat, how come you don't fall off the edge? And show me the ice wall. These are programmed responses. Another response is, if the Earth was flat with a spotlight above us, it would be daylight all the time. You'd always be able to see the sun. And these are pre-programmed responses where we've been given simple answers that work, that make flat Earth look ridiculous because it mixes heliocentrism with a false flat Earth model, right? When people think flat Earth, they think of a disk. There's a meme out there. You Google flat Earth, in space or whatever. You're going to get a meme from the Flat Earth Society, which is all of the planets, as they show them in a model, and a flat pancake Earth in the middle. Flat earthers think, where all the other planets are round and we're flat or they're all flat. Those are two false models. We don't believe that we're a disk in space. We don't believe that there's big rocks and burning balls of gas in an impossible space vacuum up in the sky. And that's scientifically provable when you look. Here's the problem. They don't teach us how to deal with big numbers in school. We're going to get into that in a minute. But first, I want to address your question, the Bedford Level. That was the one that got me. I went in reluctantly, trying to prove the Earth. I'm like, okay, ships over the horizon. I've seen it. I live on the water. And I've seen ships go over the horizon. They disappear from the bottom up. And then I found out that with today's consumer optics have outgrown their lives. The Nikon P900 came out at that time. Now there's the P1000, which is even better. But it has a super zoom on it. And I bought one. I spent $1,000, got the camera, the tripod, went down to the water's edge, and I zoomed in on beaches, on buoys that should have been dozens of feet, 66 feet below the curve. And I could see them sitting at the water's edge, a foot or two above the surface of the water, using the Earth curve calculator. I'm like, I can see these things, and it's not a mirage or refraction. Refraction, there are such things as mirages, but when a mirage happens, it's blurry, it's wobbly, it changes, it's upside down. We can see things way, way too far. So being skeptical, I was like, wait a minute, these flat earthers got the curve calculator wrong. The Earth is where Bill Nye, the lying guy with the bow tie, taught us. Oh, the Earth is so big you can't tell. You can't see curvature. And so I went to their debunking websites, and the argument on one of the sites, which is ridiculous, says you're not seeing something like 10 miles away. There should be 66 feet of curvature, it says. And he's like, no, that's not how it works. It's only 33 feet of curvature because you're halfway down off the hump on one side. Your object is halfway down off the hump on the other side. Now, that's ridiculous. But guess what? The globe is so ridiculous, I'll give it to you. You can have your 33 feet. Why can I still see a 10-foot buoy? Why can I still see people on the beach 10 miles away when they should be 33 feet or possibly 66 feet, which is true, below the curve? They're still there. So when a boat moves away into the distance, the bottom of the boat has, and this is where people start to melt down. I am going to say nothing complicated. This is simple, but they didn't teach you how to think this way. Have you ever heard the term angular resolution limits of your eyes? You know what it is?
Yes, I do.
You do, because you learned about it when you were researching flat Earth, right?
Well, yes, that, and also I looked into it, David, when I think it was you talking about the space station, because a couple of people pointed out and said, "Oh, look, it's a space station." I said, "Well, hang on a minute. That's like the size of a 747. Then it's like 100 or 200 something miles up. If you look at Dumfries and Galloway on Google Maps and go up the same thing, you won't see Dumfries and Galloway or angular perception. So, what are you talking about? Over to you."
So my point, Simon, is you learned that when you started looking into flat Earth. They never taught it to you in school. So let me tell you what it is. When you're looking at something, if you're holding a 10 foot wide 2x4, 2 inches in front of your eyes, level with your eyes, that 2x4 is covering 180 degrees of your vision. And then if I walked away from you, 100 yards, well, now that 2x4 is really tiny. It may be only covering 5 degrees of the span of your vision. And if I kept walking away until that 2x4 is so small that it's less than 0.02 degrees in width of my visual field, I can't see it scientifically. My eyes cannot resolve anything smaller than that. That's the angular resolution limits of your eyes. Great. So when you're looking, if you're standing next to a building, if you will, if you're standing next to a building and you draw a line from your eye to the base of that building, right? And then you draw a line from your eye to the top of that building. Well, the top has a much bigger angle. The one down at your eye level gets smaller and smaller. So when a boat goes away, everything merges into what's called the vanishing point, which is your horizon, horizontal. And everything gets smaller and smaller. So when you're looking at a boat or a building in the distance, the bottom of that boat, the bottom of that building has a smaller angle than to your eye than the top, because the top you're looking up, bigger angle. Right? So the bottoms will disappear first. That's part one. There's more than one reason that it would disappear. If you have, let's say there's a couple waves, it's a little breezy, boats out there, and there's waves, 1-2 foot waves, small waves, right? Well, those small waves halfway out to, if I'm looking at a building or a boat, let's say it's 10 miles out. Well, a small wave that's 5 miles out is bigger than that boat or building. The angular size at the bottom, and that wave will block the entire bottom of the building. Now, this is hard to visualize on an audio podcast, but I'm going to give everybody information where you can find all of this stuff, because guess what? Google is hiding these videos from you. They don't want you to see the people that have broken this down for you and show you how to do the experiment yourself. So the curvature formula that Robotham used, that we all use, is correct. It is incorrect if you're looking at something over 1,000 miles away. But guess what? We can't see over 1,000 miles away. The atmosphere is too thick, right? There's 3 different formulas, and anything under 1,000 miles, they all come within a couple of feet of each other at those, hundreds and hundreds of miles of distance. So they're actually perfect. They're perfect for what we do, because you really can't see more than 100 miles on a really clear day. But on a super clear day, if you have the sun backlighting a mountain, if you will, or we have infrared camera lenses, we can see things. They're not mirages. The last one thing I'll say is, here in America, there was a famous shot across Lake Michigan of Chicago, and you could see the skyline. It was over 50 miles away. And at 50 miles away from the height of that observer, they shouldn't have been able to see any of the buildings, but we can see them all. And it was on the news. and the weatherman was talking about it, and he goes, "It's a mirage," right? He said that it was a mirage. So we're like, this is not a mirage. We did a time lapse, 24 hours, day and night, and the buildings never moved. Well, if it was a mirage, mirages don't, they change in different weather conditions, different lighting conditions, didn't change. And then we also, a couple of guys got on a boat, got our P900 camera, zoomed in on Chicago, and then took the boat 50 miles across the lake, and the buildings never changed. It just got bigger and bigger as you got closer and closer. This totally gets rid of the word, mirage, refraction, all of that. We're actually seeing things. So sorry to ramble on so long, but I wanted to beat that one into the ground.
No, well done, you. No, because I was trying to work out. I was thinking refraction was to do with almost like a camera lens because of the moisture in the atmosphere, and I was thinking, well, if it's a straight line.
Let me go one more thing on refraction.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
When you're looking at something in the distance, now there's 2 different things to look at in the distance: terrestrial objects, boats, buildings, mountains, and celestial objects, clouds, stars, other luminaries in the sky, the sun. Those are celestial. When you're looking across the ground, a terrestrial to terrestrial observation, it's the same also for celestial. But looking off at a city on a humid day versus a dry day, same focus, same position, same everything. You can take a picture. The buildings will be twice the size on the humid day. And that's because the atmosphere acts like a lens. All of the water in the atmosphere acts like a magnifying glass. This isn't a theory. Mainstream science says it's true, and we can show you examples of it being true. So that's one reason why, things change. When sometimes you'll look out there and you can't see a strip of land and buildings, and the globers will be like, it's over the curve. And then the atmosphere changes a little bit, and then all of a sudden you can see it, and they go, oh, refraction. Right? No, it's you're being blocked by atmospheric magnification. There is some refraction sometimes, and there's also weather conditions. As I said, waves. Most of the times when they show you buildings or boats going over the horizon, and when we were all shown in school here in America, probably across the world, the curvature of the Earth, they showed us a 3-masted ship sailing away, and it's going away, and then they edit as it goes farther away, and it gets lower and lower, and you lose the ship, and then you just see the mast and just the top of the mast, and it's gone. But if you actually look at that video, you'll see that they keep lowering the camera each time the ship's farther away. And if you look at the waves, there's like 10-foot waves out there. It's like a massively windy, wavy day, but because you're looking so far into the distance, you don't even notice it because it all smooths out. Everything merges into the horizon. Tons of videos on that to show you how it works. And then when you see it, I'm just explaining it here on the audio podcast. When you see it, you go, oh, why didn't I realize that before?
What is the formula to miles per what should be under or over the horizon? Would you be able to...
the simplest formula and people, again, they're like, oh my God, they short circuit because we were only taught good slave math, algebra and stuff to be accounting and whatnot. And this is simple math. 8 inches per mile squared. Okay, what does that mean? Well, if I'm standing on the top of a ball and I draw a line horizontal out from the bottom of my feet, as it goes out farther and farther, the surface of that ball falls away exponentially. So the first mile is 8 inches. The second mile is not 16 inches because that would be a slope rather than a curved surface. So you have to square the miles. So second mile, 2 times 2 is 4 times 8 is 32 inches, right? Did I do that right? 16, 32. 32 inches. And then 3 miles is 6 feet. 6 feet drop at 3 miles. That means a 6-foot tall person standing at the edge of calm water should not be able to see the surface of the water beyond 3 miles because it's dropped below a physical horizon. Problem with that is we can take our super zoom cameras, put it down a foot off the water, right, on a calm day where the horizon should be 1.2 miles away or less than 2 miles away, and we can zoom out on like oil rigs. Not only can we see the oil rig at 10 miles away where there should be 50 some odd feet of curvature, we could see the surface of the water dozens of miles beyond it, right? It makes absolutely no sense. We did a famous test at the Salton Sea here in America, and the National Geographic showed up to witness our experiment and to do their own experiment. And what National Geographic did is they got they had a rigid inflatable boat, and they had this big board, and they had red and white stripes on it, kind of like the American flag. And they had their guy set up their camera at the edge of the water, just like a foot off the water. And the boat went out, and they held the big board, over the back of the boat or the side of the boat. And as it was going away, the people that were filming on the ground, they look, the bottom, as they were a couple miles away, the bottom 2 stripes are missing. And they go, yes, that's because of the curvature of the Earth. And they're like, oh, yes. And literally, either they're idiots or they're paid to do this. Well, right at the point where they said that, we took that frame, we froze it, we zoomed in, and you can see the water surface for another couple dozen miles beyond the boat. How is the curvature blocking the bottom of the board if I can still see the surface of the water beyond the boat? Again, I'll show you where to see all of these videos, because if you Google flat Earth, go on YouTube and say, all right, flat Earth proof, you're going to get top 10 reasons the Earth is not flat. And they're all straw man arguments. They're all nonsense. You'll get the National Geographic one where they're like, oh, the flat earthers tried to prove the flat Earth, and we proved it was curved. And we have videos that debunk that. We basically just take it apart and say, here's what they did. And then once you see that, then you'll realize how big this lie is, how important this lie is. And there we go.
Have you heard of Dover, south coast of Britain?
I think some experiments were done there. Tell me.
Oh, there always used to be telescopes that you could put your money in and you could see on a clear day the coast of France, which, if I'm correct, is about 25 to 30 miles away. So according to that calculation, that should be like 150 feet below the horizon. And also they used to have watching and listening posts on the coast of Dover. And by the way, then if that would be true as far as the curvature of the Earth, what good is a periscope on a submarine?
But what good is sonar on a submarine? Because we've spoken with military officials, and again, I'm going to show you. Here's the thing. Don't believe anything I say. Let me send you to the video, send you to the recording, send you to the images, let you see them yourself, and then you can go verify them yourself, because belief is easy. You can believe me. Like, hey, Simon, where do I live?
You live in the East Coast, America.
Okay, and is that a belief or is that a knowing?
Well, at the moment, because I haven't been there, it has to be a belief.
Right, exactly. And belief is so easy. You can believe me. I believe your name is Simon. You told me. I never verified it. That could be a stage name. I don't know, but we can't go through life verifying every single thing. Like, I have to trust the ingredients on food, right? Am I going to go verify it? Right. But if you want to know, I believe that they're not lying about the ingredients. Right. I believe that this is from this place. Belief is so easy. It takes zero effort and it frees up your entire day. But knowing, you might say, okay, well, let me go see. And you look me up, you find me on Facebook, and then you find my friends. And then you're like, oh, they live in the same town. Oh, here's his high school yearbook. Bam. Now you know it because you took the time and effort to verify. So we all believe a lot of nonsense because we've never, ever verified it. And because a guy in a bow tie, because our teacher, because a guy in a lab coat told us, and because we read a sentence that says a new study shows, and then, but we as soon as we see that, it becomes a belief. And the question is it a knowing? And the answer is no, you don't know anything. You mentioned at the beginning of the show, scientific facts. Well, what scientific facts? People go, there's absolutely no proof of the globe. Of the flat earth, and there's hundreds of proofs of the globe. Okay. Well, one, you're wrong. There's 1 million proofs of the flat earth, and there's 0 of the globe. And I go, what's your number one proof? And they go, science. Science? Science isn't a proof. Something using the scientific method is a proof. But, the top cosmologists out there, like Michio Kaku, excuse me, he says that in cosmology, scientists are off by a factor of 10 to the 120th power, right? He says normally if you're off by a factor of 2 or 10, that's horrible, but they're off of a factor by 10 to the 120th. You know how big that number is? Because I don't, because that number is absolutely ridiculous. It makes absolute no sense.
But it says to me that in science, or relating that to plain English, would be it's what we say as facts. If it's to 10 to the power of whatever, it's actually a maybe. Before we, sorry, carry on, David.
No, go ahead. I want to talk about numbers for a minute, but we can go.
No, carry on. No, please. This is about you today. Carry on.
So let's talk about numbers. They tell us stuff that just makes our brains melt, and then we just have to go, well, they must know. Hey, the sun's 93 million miles away. Oh, okay. Who figured it out? A scientist. How did they figure out? Well, we can't really tell you that. How far is the sun? 93 million miles. Who figured that out? How did they figure it out? Well, one way they figured it out was that Venus, which is about the same size as Earth, transited the sun one day, and then 2 people on 2 different coasts measured the time they saw it transit the sun, and it was different times, and they did some calculus, and they figured that it's 93 million miles away. Well, the problem with that is, how did they figure out Venus is the same size as Earth, right? Venus is scientifically provably not the same size as Earth, okay? I don't even think Venus is a physical object. So that's one thing. They bamboozle you into just believing whatever they say. So then the next thing they tell us is, the closest star is 25 trillion miles away, 4.5 light years, which translates to about 25 trillion miles. Okay, that's Alpha Centauri. All of the other stars aren't even close to that close to us. They are magnitudes farther. So let's just think about 25 trillion. Simon, I don't know how much of your stuff you've listened to of mine, but you probably know the answer to this question if you've listened to some. Do you know how long 1 trillion seconds is?
Well, 4 light years at 186,000 miles per second. That's a hell of a long way.
Well, but so just to understand what a trillion is, 1 trillion, that's only 12 zeros, 12 zeros. Okay, 1 trillion seconds. Do you have any idea how long that is in time? 1 trillion seconds.
I'm just going to stab at a guess here. Let's say, I don't know, 1,000 years maybe? Probably way off.
31,000 years. Okay, so just let that sink in for a second. 1 trillion seconds is 31,000 years. So if you're on a spaceship and you say, I'm going to go to Alpha Centauri, and let's say we're going a mile per second, which is faster than any human has ever moved anything. Nothing's gone that fast. Okay. And you went for 31,000 years. Hey, you only have to do that 24 more times to get to the closest star. Okay. Do you see a problem here? Then there's 2 problems with seeing stars, right? Well, how big must that star be to see it at that incomprehensible, impossible distance? And how bright must it be? Because when you move a light into the distance, every time you double the distance, the light is 1/4 of the brightness, because that light has to expand out in all directions as it's traveling away from its source. And as it's expanding, it's not repowering itself, it's thinning itself. Just like when you blow up a balloon, the rubber gets thinner and thinner. If I blew a balloon up to 1 foot wide, the rubber's thinner than it is when it's tiny. And if I blew it up to 10 foot wide, it's probably going to pop. And if I blew it up to 100 miles wide, there'd be no rubber. There'd be no light. Okay. So that's called the inverse square law of light, which absolutely makes stars impossible to see. The other problem is the angular size. Again, this is scientifically provable. The angular size, it would be impossible to see. Our sun, let's in the heliocentric model, let's say if our sun was one of those big yoga balls that you sit on, the Earth would be a small marble next to it. If I had the sun just a mile over your head and you looked up, it would fill the entire sky, horizon to horizon. Oh my God, the sun is so big next to this tiny Earth, it would fill the whole sky. Then we move it 93 million miles away, which is 8 light minutes. And now it is reduced due to perspective, due to going into the distance. It is reduced to the size of a coin held at arm's length, right? Look at the sun. What's the size of a regular coin held at arm's length? Okay. What happens if I double the distance? How much smaller does it get? Most people that you have a working brain say, well, it would probably be too small to see. But other people say, well, it would be half the size if you double the distance. That's wrong, but I'll go with that. Make it 24 times farther. Everybody will agree. Excuse me. Everybody will agree that it's scientifically impossible to see. Its angular size is magnitudes too small, 24 times the distance. Okay? So again, here's where people short circuit. This is nothing complicated what I just said. 24 times the distance, 24 times 8 minutes is 3 light hours. At 3 light hours away, the distance light allegedly travels in 3 hours, it would be 24 times the distance of the sun. Okay, we can't see the sun. So how do we compare that to a star? Well, here's a star that you and I can both see, which is the North Star. It's 48 times bigger. Well, how far would it have to be the same size that we see the sun at 24 times the distance? Well, 48 times 3 light hours is 6 light days. Round up to a week. If Polaris was 1 light week a day at the size that they tell us, ignoring the inverse square law of light issue, it would be provably too small to see. But they tell us, Polaris, that we can see every night, all year long, with our naked eyes, is 433 light years away. Your brain should have melted at this point. You can't comprehend the differences of these numbers, the issues with this. It would be impossible to see, but we can see it. So what does that tell you? That tells you that the thing that we call Polaris is small, and it's here within the Earth system.
So I was talking about the angle of perception, and it kind of slots nicely, if I could bring that up again, with the space station. Now, I don't know. I pretty much heard yourself and Crow 777 talk about you don't know what's up there, but you just know they're luminaries. absolutely. And when people point the space station out to me, I don't know because I haven't been there. But I just think, well, it's too small to see. Whatever's up there is a luminary moving across the sky that people are talking about. Or you could even mention the satellites which allegedly were launched at the beginning of the pandemic. This big snake-like thing and I'm thinking, if they're the size of a suitcase, how can you possibly see them? So can you just, before we move on, can you just tell me how people, and I'm not getting the point, how you can see a space station that's allegedly the size of a 747 hundreds of miles away? Am I not getting the point? Am I being stupid?
No, you're 100% on. Think about it. 747 is gigantic. It's the size of a football field. It's close to the size of the space station. If you watch the 747 flying at cruising altitude, it's tiny and it's gray and you can't even see the engines, which are gigantic, which are bigger than satellites. Okay. So you see an airplane flying at cruising altitude, 747. It's tiny. Why is it tiny? Because it's far away. Why is it kind of grayed out? Because the light diminishes over distance and you can't see the markings on it. You just see, oh yeah, you can see it's a plane and usually laying a huge chemtrail or something. But now if you double the distance, it's scientifically provable that this angular size, the brightness of the light getting to you, it's too small to see. The space station is 50 times farther, 50 times farther. Okay. How the heck can we see it? And why is it reflecting light? Why, when we see that luminary go by, is it the brightest light in the sky other than the sun and the moon? It's brighter than any star, right? If it's reflecting sunlight, which is impossible because it's too low and it just doesn't work that way, it would only reflect it to my eye, not to people 10 miles away from me or 100 miles away from me. Okay? How is that possible? And when I've watched it come up, I was like, it's supposed to show up now. Oh, there it is on the horizon. And it takes about 8 minutes to cross the horizon. Well, 8 minutes at 17,500 miles an hour. It should be, I'm on the East Coast in America. It should be on the West Coast. How come I can still see it? How come it went 3,000 miles and I could still see it? Okay. These are impossible things. Now, what is the space station? Is it a natural luminary? Is it a projection from here on Earth? Because they do have the technology to do that. Or is it a aircraft that is disguised to look like a space station with LED lights on it? We had a NASA whistleblower that said that's exactly what they're doing. There's 5 of them that they use. That's my number one guess, but I'm not going to rule out that maybe now they're using a projection where they can project a hologram, if you want, into the sky, and they can only project it for certain distances at certain points. That's why it just disappears sometimes. If you look at the tracker, all of a sudden it just disappears. It's crazy. My guess is when we see that bright light going through the evening sky, that is a projection. But when we see something transit the sun and the moon, which is a fairly new thing, that's the stage trick that they're using an old B-2 bomber or something like that that's been re-outfitted to look like the space station, so people can actually photograph it transiting the sun and moon and believe in space. It's all done to make you believe that you're insignificant flying through an infinite, godless universe.
Because I often thought to myself, whatever that is, it must be either A, a lot bigger or closer, kind of like the same thing, back to angle of perception.
Yep.
Or it's something else. Now, before I move on to the next question, one of the discussion points that I had with people that are, because I don't know if it's a space station. I don't know. Again, I've never been there. But one of the discussion points I'd said to them, it's illuminating. They would say, it's the sun. I said, well, because we're dark, it should be in the shadow. It should have no illumination at all. Or it's way further out, so you still wouldn't see it. What are you not getting about this? It's shiny, and you're seeing it, and you're telling me that you've got monocular vision to hundreds of miles.
Here's the issue. If you believe in the space station, then you believe that there's people on a space station. Go watch any spacewalk when they're in the sunlight. It's not reflecting light. It's just like lit up, like your yard's lit up. It's not reflecting light back to Earth brighter than it looks like a piece of the sun when it goes by. It's that bright. Okay. We would see these astronauts doing these ridiculous spacewalks they'd have to be reflecting the sunlight so bright that the camera would blind out. But people don't want to process that information, because if this is true, that has to be true, right? Space is scientifically impossible. Okay, you can't have high pressure next to low pressure without a physical barrier. And since it's impossible, scientifically impossible, I don't know why we're even discussing anything. The bottom line on the space station is, and we can go to your next question, is nobody has ever been to space, because space doesn't exist as we're told. No one is ever on those rockets. And people go, what about the Challenger? I saw it explode, right? And all those astronauts, we found all those astronauts. They're all alive. They all work for universities. They claim to be the twin, the identical twin of their brother and sisters. But it's funny, none of them showed up at their funerals. It's right here in front of our face. And people refuse, because our core belief as a child is built around heliocentrism. All the movies that we love, Star Wars, Star Trek, just all of this stuff. All of the television shows growing up as kids, they were all based on space and extraterrestrials. Extraterrestrials are real. They're just not coming from those ridiculous distances in an impossible vacuum universe.
Describe the place we exist, if you wouldn't mind, in the form that you accept it to be.
Well, first, let's start with people that are flat earth deniers or globe believers have two things in common. One is they don't know their own model. They don't know the diameter of the earth, the circumference of the earth, the speed that it's spinning, the distance to the sun. They don't know any of this stuff because they've never looked into it. And the other thing they have in common is they have a false belief of what flat earth is. They believe that it's a disk in space. They Googled flat earth once and they got to the Flat Earth Society, which is a disinformation site run by the government, that says flat earthers believe that the earth is rising at 9.8 meters per second, which causes gravity, right? No flat earther believes that. Only globe believers believe that. So let's talk about what the flat earth is, if it's not that, okay? So the question I have is, when it rains, the water accumulates and makes puddles outside. Where do those puddles accumulate?
In a concave.
Right, and the edge of the puddle is contained by the land that's higher than the water. And if you lowered the edge of on one side of the puddle, the water would flow out looking for its next resting spot. So water needs a container. If you had a bathtub, great, it's filled with water. But if you got rid of the tub, the water goes away. So water needs a container. Large bodies of water at rest lay flat, scientifically, provably, testably, measurably flat. Okay? So a lake is a bigger puddle, a pond is a bigger puddle, a lake is a bigger pond. A lake is the same thing. Why does the water stay in the lake? Because the edge of the lake, the land that surrounds the lake all the way around without exception, is higher. If you lowered the land, you now have a river flowing out of the lake. Okay? So the world oceans, consider them as a giant lake. And the land that surrounds our lake, what is that land? Wait, hold on a minute. Aren't we on a ball spinning through an impossible space vacuum? No, we're on a big lake, right? So imagine this. Well, you have here in America, Kansas is a big state, and it's very, very flat. They say it's one of the flattest states. So imagine in Kansas, there's a lake 10 miles around, okay? And it's got islands on it and everything. Okay, so you're on this lake, and there's islands all over the place, and at the very center of the lake is a very tall island, a mountain island, and and the mountain is magnetic. So now I take out my compass on that lake. I'm on my little motorboat. I take out my compass, and the needle points to the center of the lake. I'm like, cool, all right? So now I look at my compass. I say, I want to head east, and I just look at the compass. And I'm not even looking, and I'm just following the compass, and I'm heading east. Well, that east is going to take me not in a straight line. It's going to make me circle around that magnetic mountain, because my needle is always going to point towards the center. And after a few miles or whatever, depending how far I am from the center, I'm going to end up right back where I started from, and I was maintaining a heading of 90 degrees on that lake. And if I tried to go west, same thing. That needle always has to point towards the center. Go out in your yard, pick a tree, say that's the North Pole, take your left arm, point it directly out at that tree, and we'll just say, okay, that's north. Take your other hand, point it 90 degrees in front of you to your other arm, and you can call that east or west. And now try to walk east or west, but make sure that left arm is always pointing at that tree, right? East and west is 90 degrees to that, and that's going to bring you in a circle. You've just circumnavigated your yard, therefore your yard is a sphere if you're a globalist, okay? Same thing on the lake. East and west are circles around the center. If I go south, which way is south? South is every direction away from the center. North is the center. South is every direction away. So if I start going south, what's going to happen? I get to the edge of the lake. Do I fall off into space? No. I step up on the Kansas. And now, what's out there? What's beyond the edge of the lake? Well, I can only see 5 miles maybe. Let me go walk. And I start walking and walking and walking. I've walked hundreds and hundreds of miles. I'm still in Kansas. I can't even see the lake anymore. And what if I came across another lake? Lake with islands, right? Imagine if that lake had a North Magnetic Mountain in the middle. I get on a boat there, and now I'm in a whole nother world. So what is the shoreline that surrounds our land? Well, Antarctica. Google Antarctica, pictures of Antarctica from space, and all you'll get is cartoons, because Antarctica isn't what they tell us. It's not a continent at the bottom of a ball. Antarctica, they tell us, is the highest land on Earth. Google Antarctica ice ball. It's not a wall like the Game of Thrones. That's to make you think that it's something that it's not. It's the shoreline of Antarctica. They tell us Antarctica is the highest land on Earth. The plateau of Antarctica is like 200 feet above sea level, right? When you get there, there's a cliff 200 feet high to get to ground level. Antarctica is the container of our pond, of our world pond. And it surrounds us, right? They tell us Antarctica is 10 to 13,000 miles in circumference. Well, how come when anyone's tried to circumnavigate it on a boat, they end up going 60 to 75,000 miles before they make the circumference, before they get around? 60 to 75,000 miles. That kind of sounds like the perimeter of our oceans, not a continent at the bottom of a ball, right? There's a map called the Gleason's map that was in all the schools and all the libraries everywhere, and then they removed it in the mid-1900s, okay? That's the most accurate map that we have, and it's the one that's used for navigation today. But most kids have never seen it. And it shows our world and the ocean and Antarctica surrounding us. Look at the United Nations flag. Look at the World Meteorological flag, the maritime flag. They're all using that map with the feathers around the outside representing Antarctica. Why is Antarctica off limits? Okay, what do you mean it's off limits? Well, in the 1940s and 50s, we started exploring Antarctica. Admiral Byrd from America here flew out, and he came back, and he went on the news early in the days of television and said, there's land beyond the South Pole, which is a problem if you're on a globe, bigger than America, filled with resources that no human has ever set foot upon. Somehow, while the world is at war, fighting over resources and land, information comes out that there's a continent bigger than the United States, filled with resources that could fuel the world. And every country in the world signs the Antarctic Treaty. Nobody can go there. They all agree. And it's still in place today. Can't question it until the year 2041. How the heck is that possible? We can't agree on anything, but this is the longest standing treaty. Hey, we need oil, uranium, coal, everything. It's all there. But no, you can't go there. And everyone's like, oh, can't go there. No corporation, nobody can go there. Okay. So I kind of got off track a little bit, but that's how I see the world right now. Is this pond all there is? Or are there other ponds beyond our pond across the plane? Again, I'm not saying which one's true. I'm saying we should have the right to go explore, but no one is allowed to explore. You can't even get to Antarctica without a permit. Right. And you can take a vacation. There's Antarctic tours, right? They'll basically take you to that little peninsula off of the coast of Santiago, Chile. And then you go to Antarctica. They have you on this little island. They show you some ice, some penguins, and they kick you out. They don't let you explore the outer space. Outer space. Wow. Think about this. If there's more continents and more oceans beyond Antarctica across the flat Earth plane, well, that would be more land. There's more land. Well, more extra land territory, extra territory. If somebody lived in that outer area away from us on the extra territory and they came into the inner area where we are to visit, one might consider them an extraterrestrial from outer space.
We will be right back after this message.
Hi, I'm Chad Schiller, and you may remember me from the great movies I've appeared in, such as The Kids Didn't Get What They Came For and Robot Grandma. With gas prices getting out of control and keeping your vehicle in reasonable condition to get you places, it's getting to be way too much money to get around, right? The guys at Trebuchet.com have the answer. For just $8,000, they can fit, install, and service up to 4 trebuchets strategically placed where you're going and how to come back. Use the promo code SlickPodcast22 to get you a swinging woo-wee 5% off your family projection seats. Trebuchet.com. Are you ready?
Podcast. The Slick Podcast. Yeah, it's a Slick Podcast. Truly unforgettable topic. This is Slick Podcast.
And we're back. David, tell me, do you know if pilots have to dip the nose of their plane whilst flying because otherwise they fly off the angle of the Earth into space?
Well, they absolutely don't. And we, if you look at the spy plane, the SR-71, it's going Mach 3.2. It would have to nose down like miles every minute just to follow the curve of the Earth. A standard airplane would have to nose down 30 miles an hour. Every hour, it would have to nose down 30 miles, okay, to follow the curve of the Earth. Well, you're on an airplane flying across the plane, airplane, cross the plane. You go up, let's say you're flying here to America to come visit me. Are you going to get on the plane? You're going to have a little snack. You're going to tip your chair back. You're going to take a nap, right? You maybe watch a movie. You take a nap. And then as soon as the pilot just starts adjusting, descending the tiniest little bit, slow descent. Hey, we're going to be at the airport in about 45 minutes, blah, blah. You wake up. You're like, whoa, something changed. I'm changing direction, right? The speed of, the speed that they would have to drop down would be insanity. Everybody would be throwing up. It would be insane. But, globalists will say, no, gravity is holding you down, right? Absolute nonsense, okay? Absolute and complete and total nonsense. Here, let me ask you a question. So picture a globe. You got the top half is the northern hemisphere. The bottom half is the southern hemisphere. And you got the equator going around the middle. Now, you're a pilot. I want you to pick any two random spots, any combination of any two random spots in the north. All right? And now I'm going to ask you to get on an airplane. You live on a globe. And would you ever, no matter where the origin and destination is, as long as they're both in the north, would you ever cross below the equator to get there?
I would say no.
You're absolutely right. No plane ever does, traveling from a northern hemisphere location to another northern hemisphere location. Would the same be true on a globe for southern locations?
Well, I would say you would have to go through it, wouldn't you?
No. From a southern. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase it. From any southern location to another southern location.
Oh, right. Okay. Then
would you ever go up above the equator?
No, you wouldn't. No.
Okay. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. When you fly from many southern locations to other distant southern locations, they cross the equator. They go these ridiculous, crazy routes on a globe. Locate Australia and locate Santiago, Chile. Both of them are at the bottom. Both of them are near Antarctica. The shortest flight would be across Antarctica, but because of the Antarctic Treaty, you can't do that. So let's just stay at the same latitude and take the trip around Antarctica a little bit and get over from Santiago to Australia. That would be the shortest trip, but that's not how they go. They go all the way up to America, all the way across to China, and then all the way back down Singapore and Australia. This big loop on a globe. You have to draw it from the bottom of the globe, up across the equator, across the northern hemisphere, and then all the way back down. But if you get the Gleason's map, the flat Earth map, if you will, and draw that same flight route, it's a straight line. There's all of these flights that take these crazy detours. You look at them on a flat Earth map, they're straight lines. And there's a book called 16 Emergency Landings That Prove Flat Earth. The PDF is free online. You go to lulu.com and get the book, where this guy, Eddie, documented 16 emergency landings. And so what's so important about emergency landing? Well, flight is following the route that they tell you it's on. And all of a sudden, somebody has a heart attack, they're having a baby, whatever. They need to land a plane, and they find the nearest airport, and they land. But if you look at that airport on the globe, sometimes they land at airports that are 1,000, 1,500 miles out of the way, and somehow they got there in 15 minutes. Like, wait a minute. How did they get there, and why did they go there? But if you look at that location of the emergency landing, on the flat Earth map, if you draw a straight line from the origin to the destination, that emergency landing is directly on that line, or very, very, very close to it. These emergency landings absolutely prove the Earth is flat. And again, don't believe me because I just told you. If you were watching this on video, don't believe me because I showed you a meme where I demonstrated it. Look at the details, look up the facts, and luckily for you, Eddie put the whole thing together in a book. 16 emergency landings, all of the news reports, all of the flight data, all of the radar, everything. It's all there documented to make it easy so you can find out that you don't live on a speck of dust flying through an infinite space universe.
What is the name of that map that was withdrawn from schools in the 50s?
Gleason's map, the new standard map of the world. Gleason's new standard map of the world. You can just look it up. It's out there. You can buy big prints of it, high res. I actually, a lot of my videos, I have a link to a high-res restored version of it, and you can print it out yourself.
You currently have the Sun and the Moon Clock app that can be downloaded at a very reasonable price, I might add. And also, importantly to know, it has good reviews. David, tell us about the app and how it's used and the benefits of having it.
Well, the app does so much now. It is so much more than what I thought it when I had made it. I originally made it for myself just so I can have something in my hand when I'm talking to somebody and show them the animation. Because once you see how the sky is the perfect clock, the sun is the hour hand. And, our clock, our time is based on where the sun is. Well, you know how they screwed us up? They gave it, hey, let's give the slaves a clock where the hour hand goes around twice a day. They'll never figure it out. Well, if you have a 24-hour clock and you just glue a little sun onto the hour hand, well, wherever that hour hand is, that's where it's noon. And you put that over the Gleason's map, that's where it's noon. So the map shows you how the sun keeps track of the hours and the days. The sun will lap the moon, which is also circling in the same direction. Scientism tells us it's going in the opposite direction around the Earth, and we're going around the sun, stuff that most minds can't sort out. And it laps the moon every 28 days. So the position of the moon and the phase of the moon keep track of the weeks and the months. There used to be 13 months of 28 days, but they hijacked our calendar. And then the stars are also rotating above us in the same direction, but they're going slightly faster than the sun, so much that it takes 365 times for them to lap the sun. As I always say, people go out at night, take a clear picture of the stars wherever you are, and then put a note in your calendar to do the same thing at the same spot on the same night a year later and compare the stars, and they're all in the exact same position, right? So the clock, the flat Earth, Sun, Moon, and Zodiac clock app, that is just one thing that it does. The more important thing is every day there's a new featured video on it. Because as I said before, if you Google flat Earth, you can Google one of the most famous biggest videos out there is called A Stranger's Guide to Flat Earth, 21 Questions. Well, that's a pretty unique title. Put that in YouTube. It ain't going to come up. Okay. It's got millions and millions and millions of views, but it won't feed it to you. It'll show up, 10 pages down. But they'll throw a bunch of, straw man arguments. They have a whole bunch of flat Earth we call them the anti-flat earthers, people that just mock and make fun and call names, but they never offer any proof of their globe. They just try to disprove flat Earth rather than offer a single proof of the globe because there are none. And the challenge I give people, I'm offering 3 Bitcoins for 1 proof of the globe, but you have to watch that video every day for 2 weeks. Short ones during the week, longer ones on the weekends, because I know people have to go to their slave jobs and be part of the system. And at the end of that 2 weeks, if you think you have 1 proof of the globe, you can send it to me at info@theflatearthpodcast.com. But before you do, you have to hit the frequently asked questions button, and up comes the top questions you have. And most of your questions are already in there. You look and you go, oh, now that makes sense. And then you go back and you try to come up with another one. Also in it, there's tons of more resources. There's stuff on mud floods, Tataria. There's images. I have a image gallery. If you're a flat earther already, or if you're learning about flat earth, hit the image gallery. Check out the images I have there, the stuff that I talk about. It's all illustrated for you in a great visual format. And then one other thing that's on there, when you become a flat earther, you're looking for other like-minded people. Well, I have on there, I have the Flat Earth Friend Finder. You hit that button, it'll, you give it permission to find your approximate location or your exact location, whatever you want. You have total control. And it'll show you all of the other flat earthers around you. You can tap on one of their dots. You can send them a message. You can select a radius around you and send a group message to everybody. Hey, I'm having a meetup at Joe's Bar and Grill. Excuse me. Joe's Bar and Grill, Saturday, 4 p.m., 123 Main Street. And then people show up. We just did it in New York. 80 people came. It was phenomenal. And another thing about this is flat earthers are really awake, aware people. And it's really, anyone that discovers the earth is flat, all you want to do every day is wake up other people. You want to unplug them from the matrix, because basically you're showing them where they are. You're unplugging them from the matrix. It's the best description I have. And so people are actually using this not only to make new friends, but to have new relationships. There's already babies happening because of this. People are finding like-minded people around you, and they're also using it for work. Like if you fill out a profile on the app and you check other people's profiles, like, hey, this person's looking for work. Hey, I'm looking to hire somebody, or I'm looking for work, right? And honestly, flat earthers have the advantage. In 2015, when people go, oh, you're a flat earther, good luck getting a job. Well, flat earthers can go work for anybody, because they can just not mention flat earth, or they can, doesn't matter. But flat earthers only hire other flat earthers. Okay. Flat earthers only want to work for other flat earthers now. And it's growing. The numbers are growing exponentially. And we are going to hit the tipping point in the near future, assuming that the powers that be don't literally flip the tables over and destroy the world, because they're cornered. And they realize that their reign is coming to an end very soon. So the app is called Flat Earth, Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app. Longest, hardest name ever to remember, but the easiest place to get it is, if you forget the name, flatearthdave.com. Flatearthdave.com. There's links to the app there. There's links to my YouTube channel, which is DITRH, the initials for Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole. And I have all short videos there, under 5 minutes, most of them. 2 minutes, some of them. My interviews are on there. This interview will be on there. The app is on there. There's my podcast is on there. We haven't done a recent episode of the podcast, but just listen to the podcast. There's also I have what's called the Flat Earth Crash Course. All right, what is that? It's a list of great, highly produced documentaries on flat Earth, and I challenge anyone to get through 3 of them and not become a complete and total anti-glober, if you will, a globe denier, or if you prefer, flat earther. So flatearthdave.com, that's where you can find everything.
What, in your opinion, would be the benefit of the traditional teaching that the world is a roundest shape, and keeping that narrative, when, according to your findings, research, and many experiments, it seems the opposite may be true?
Well, if you don't know who you are, where you are, if you're spinning out of control, if you believe you live in a heliocentric universe, you're corkscrewing through space in 4 different directions at once, and you're insignificant. Every cell in your body has that fear in it, because an asteroid could take us out. That's not true. There are no asteroids. We're running out of, we're on a ball. Therefore, there's only a certain amount of oil. Well, that's not true. Oil is abiotic. We shouldn't even be pulling it out of the earth, because there's free energy. We're running out of space. Untrue. Every single family could have an acre in Australia, and half of Australia would be empty. Okay. we're running out of resources, untrue. You're running out of water, running out of food, all nonsense. It's all absolute nonsense. So it's not the shape of the earth that matters. Flat is not a shape. Flat is a description of level and horizontal. It's the fact that you're at the center of creation, right? Flat earthers have no fear and they're never bored. Fear and boredom are the mind killers. You talk to any flat earther and say, have you been bored for a split second since you found out the earth was flat? Absolutely not, because there's so much to see out there. There's so much that relates to flat earth, from Tartaria, and the mud floods to everything, just basically everything. It's the most amazing place. So, excuse me. When you believe that you only use 10% of your brain, when you believe that you're in a heliocentric prison, when you believe that governments control you, when you believe that there's shortages on everything, you live in fear. False evidence appearing real. You let the news steer your mind. The news, north, east, west, south. It's a mechanism to steer your mind, keep you in fear. So the shape of the earth doesn't matter. It's where you are on the earth and what this place is and how safe we are and how protected we are. And they don't want us to know the power of our mind. When you become a flat earther, you take back your power. You unplug from the matrix. You stop feeding the fear mechanism and you take your life back. You take your power back. So this is bigger than most flat earthers even realize, because it's not just about, oh, wow, it's flat. That's cool. No, it's about regaining your stability and connecting to the earth system, which we're all part of. It's a living system with a heavenly realm above us and this physical realm where we're in, and it's all connected. We're all part of the whole thing. Consciousness, it goes really, really deep. You mentioned earlier that you listen to Crow. Are you a subscriber of Crow?
I am.
Best podcast ever. I call it it's the new college, right? If you have a college-age kid or yourself, whatever, $8 a month. Forget college, $8 a month. Have the kid listen to the 2 new episodes every week and 3 old ones every week. That's 2 hours, 5 days a week, and they will learn more than any college. And I'm comparing it to college is actually ridiculous, because college is actually just a slave camp. Those are the people that are going to function well in this world, that learn how to function in this world, right? And again, that's also linked in the app. I have a homeschooling section in the app right there. $8 a month, no financing. That's your whole college. You don't need to be financed. It's $8 a month, all right? And you will know more and how to function in this world than any college graduate or anybody else. It's truly amazing. So that's a lot about the app, but the reason I'm selling the app, at first the app was free at the beginning, but everyone's like, hey, can you add this? Can you add this? Add this? And all these things cost money. The cost to run this app is insane. If I told you how much it costs, you'd be like, whoa. The app costs $3, one-time charge, right? But there's a premium features on the app. One is you get the friend finder, but you can't send messages without being a subscriber. You can't fill out a profile or view other profiles without being a subscriber. And the app also has weather, where you can tap the weather on the home screen. It takes you to the Dark Sky app, which is, I think they charge $3 a month to have that, but that's included with the app. Those 3 things are what the subscription gets you. And the subscription is literally like buying me a drink at a bar. Okay, it's like buying me a margarita. It's $11 a year. Okay, $11 a year, and you get everything. But if you don't want that stuff, you don't have to. The app will have all of the other stuff for you. So there you go. And again, there's also a fake one out there by Flat Earth Society on the Google Play Store. Use my name, use some of my graphics. The app is horrible. So if you get it, I get emails every day. I got your app. I can't find the featured videos. It doesn't look the same. It's not seems to be functioning yet. It's not my app. So make sure you get the right one. It's by Blue Water Bay. Flat Earth, Sun, Moon, and Zodiac clock app by Blue Water Bay. All the links can be found at flatearthdave.com.
I suppose if the skeptical part of me looks at the other app that tries to make it look like yours, you've certainly got other people's attention and they want to try and divert your message.
Yeah, they have the anti-flat earthers are all linked in there, all of the debunking videos. Why is Google hiding stuff? And why is this app linking to the stuff that they're promoting? It's really, truly amazing what they do.
And worrying as well, David. I mean, you've obviously got people's attention, so it's not like the rambling was a madman. Why would you develop an app just to make it look like yours, just to disinformation? Just put out a video. David doesn't know what he's on about. Move on. But obviously, no. We need to develop an app here. I see divinity's hand in all things. I am in no doubt that intelligent design is responsible for where and who we are. Everything, and even seemingly nothing, is a carefully created piece of this existence. Kind of personal question, David, but what say you on the subject of a creator or creators?
Yeah, so before I discovered flat Earth, I guess you can consider me an atheist because I didn't believe in any thing. I believed in evolution. I believed, lightning struck and DNA was made and it made an amoeba and it turned into a fish and the fish grew some legs and it climbed out of the water and found another sexy fish and had a monkey and the monkey had a human, right? I believed all of that insane nonsense. But once I understood what the flat Earth was, and I'm like, wow, this is an intelligently designed system. And then I was like, oh man, that means it was created. Now that means there's a creator. If it was creative, it's intelligently designed. It's truly amazing. You have to believe that, through genetic mutations, human eye formed, and I could see colors and distances and I could sense everything and I could comprehend what I'm seeing and navigate through this incredible place. This is such an intensely designed system. So therefore there's a creator. Who that creator is, that's everyone else's personal journey. I think that all religions all worship the same creator. They just have their own way of describing it. So I also think that, the organized religion is just another means of separation and control. They don't want you in a position where you can't deny the creator. The people that are running this world hate the creator. They are trying to impersonate the creator, and they don't want you in a situation where you can't deny it. And that's the problem. There are no atheist flat earthers, right? We have different ideas on who or what the creator is. That's fine. That's your own personal journey. That's what this is all about. Okay. So once you understand that, it's not even a belief. It's a knowing. Now, I can't say I know who and how and why, but I know there is a creator, period. That's all that matters. And the whole thing is my view of this place is we're here to figure it out, to help each other and to expand the mind of the creator. Our essence, like David Weiss is not just this body. I am connected to the source of David Weiss. And I'm having an experience here, my soul's journey, right? The object of life here is don't lose control of your soul. And you do that by following natural law.
I've often thought to myself that, I include myself in this, I've often thought that if you believe the creator or creators speak to you directly, so you're in communion, that's fine. But keep it to yourself and don't force it on others. What do you say about that?
Well, so people say, oh, flat earth is a bunch of crazy Christians, right? And that is true. There are a bunch of crazy Christians, but there's also a bunch of very sane Christians. Here's the thing. If you grab 50 or 100 people anywhere, any group, there's going to be a bunch of crazy Christians. There's going to be a bunch of crazy Jews. There's going to be a whole bunch of people. You get all different people. There's people that have when I first was researching stuff long before flat earth, I'd be listening to a podcast like, this is great. I got 2 pages of notes, and all of a sudden they would mention Jesus or Muhammad, and they'd do a little prayer or whatever, and I'd tear up all the notes and I'd throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm like, oh man, these are religious fanatics. Not every, people don't get everything right. So that's the throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Take the good, leave the bad. I'm not even saying that they're bad. It's just like, that was my belief that it was completely and totally wrong. There's Christians out there, I'm not just picking on the Christians, but they're the most prevalent, that say, if you don't accept Jesus, you're going to hell. Well, that is the best way to scare people away. And there's other people out there that just set by an example, like, hey, this is what I do. This is what I believe. And, and you're doing great work, David. That's great. That helps people, see and find the creator themselves. I'm not claiming anyone's got it wrong or anyone's got it right. Everyone has their own journey, and that's right for you.
I think that's very eloquently answered. That's where I was coming from. I have no problem with anybody that has faith or anything, but if they see someone as not waving that flag, they seem to condemn them to hell. I a true Christian, a true Muslim, a true Buddhist, even a true atheist are all true friends of mine, but you find very few and far between. Lots wear the badge and wear the flag, but very few of them actually act the way they should. So moving on, I was lucky enough to have interviewed Bart Sabrell a few weeks back on the show. Now, I know we've kind of touched on the subject, and he is adamant that we not only didn't get to the moon, but we are trapped by the Van Allen radiation belt. He has publicly called out Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong, getting a punch in the face by Buzz Aldrin when Bart called him a coward and a liar to his face, on camera, by the way. I was amazed that Bart had never been sued for libel by any of the astronauts. What's your take on that whole space program back then and currently now, aka what I was saying about the space station and that snaking wave of satellites or whatever the hell that was last year?
Yeah, Bart Sabrell is an interesting character. And, on his movie, Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, he was, I believe, personally leaked that footage where they show them faking the Earth, because Art has that. That is his claim to fame. But what that says is that astronauts were in a ship orbiting the Earth, faking their trip to the moon. No astronauts go up anywhere. There's no one. No one's ever in those rockets. And that's a hard pill for people to swallow. So Bart, he is anti-flat Earth, because if he goes flat Earth, then his entire thing falls apart. Other than the fact that, he tried to get astronauts to swear on the Bible that they walked on the moon, and they wouldn't. For $5,000 cash, he had the cash in his hand. That says something to you right there. Bart is not the brightest guy in the world, not the dumbest, but he's done some good work, but he is lost in space again. And if you don't believe me, well, what about, what do you mean no one's been to space, right? On the app, if you hit the web button under the more resources, I have a button called Rockets Are Balloons. There's a series of videos there that if you watch that, just be careful. Your entire life is going to change, because your view of what's going on with these launches will be completely destroyed. And then I highly recommend you hit the ISS button, or the NASA, are all space agencies in on a button, and start watching some of those videos, because you'll see that these rockets that they're launching are balloons, or they're miniatures, or they're CGI, depending on which launch you're looking at. And we've caught the errors. We've seen how they do it. We show you, we expose the projections that fall apart. We expose the astronauts on the International Space Station hanging from wires using green screens. On my DITRH channel, at the time of this recording, I just put out a video. They had the woman, a black woman astronaut, putting out this whole agenda, but she's clearly hanging from wires the entire time. And at the end, when she does her obligatory flip for everybody to go ooh, ah, she gets tangled up in her wires. Okay. It's absolute insanity that people believe this stuff. People believe Elon Musk put a car in space, but they never saw it. They never listened to the press conference where Elon says, you can tell it's real because it looks so fake. We'd have better CGI. That's a quote. Okay. They never looked at it and said, why didn't the tires explode? How come I could see through the wheel well? Where's the rear view mirror? How come I saw, how come the Earth glitched back and forth, but the car didn't? Okay. All of this stuff is out there for those to see, but you can't force anybody to see things. People will not, look, because it will challenge their core beliefs, right? It's unbelievable how bad this stuff is. And there's people out there that say, you know what? If an astronaut went on CNN and said, we faked the moon, we never went, it's all fake, they just wouldn't believe him. They'd still believe we went to the moon. There's people that have these belief systems that they refuse to get rid of. So it's a tough road, but we're going through this time right now where the energy is shifting on Earth and people are waking up so fast. In 2015, I mentioned flat Earth to somebody. I literally get attacked. It was unbelievable. Now I mention flat Earth to somebody. They're like, I've heard something about that. I have some questions. Let's do a show. Okay. It's harder and harder to find people that check off the box on my booking form. I have a section that says, you believe the Earth is a globe, flat, unsure. I'm mostly getting flat and unsure. Okay. I think you checked off unsure.
Yeah, I did. Not because it's a case of I don't believe you. It's a lot to take in, which is why I structured the questions, why I did. And one of the guys that I interviewed, John Hamer, quite a well-known author in this country, I had him on the show a couple of times, has pointed out as well, I'd like you to comment, about gravity. If there's trillions of tons of water, and it's held down by gravity, a butterfly can take off easily. And also, so like you got to answer that, but also I have always wondered why the globe, we are told, or the place where we live is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, allegedly, yet at night the stars don't streak by. Are they or are they not in a fixed position? So it's questions like that. It's not a case of belief. It's a case of trying. Because if I said, yeah, absolutely, 100% believe you, you'd say, Simon, come on, no one believes it. I've done research, I've listened to your podcast, and I still have questions like that. So I'm just being honest with you, So why don't the stars streak by if the stars are not in a fixed position? And how come a butterfly can take off, yet trillions of tons of water don't suddenly dissipate into our atmosphere?
Right. Well, the stars streaking by, the Glober argument is it's so far away that you don't see the parallax. Again, space is fake and scientifically impossible. So why are we even talking about this? It doesn't make any sense. And true, the spinning of the Earth, that's the slowest motion. We're going 66,000 miles and we're moving 500,000 miles an hour in two other directions. And the stars don't, show any of that movement. It's absolute insanity. To believe that, we're traveling 4.5 billion miles a year and then we look up and see the exact same stars in the exact same position and they haven't changed forever is insanity. And then if you look at, the pyramids and and Stonehenge and, by the way, which is also another fake monument. And here in America, the Georgia Guidestones, they all have astronomical views where you look up and Polaris is locked into position. And it hasn't moved, right? It doesn't move. It never moves. Okay. And, the Globers will go, 4,000 years ago, we had a different star. It was Thuban. And 4,000 years from now, we'll have another star. Untrue. We can look through the Georgia Guidestones, which have been up for over 40 years, and Polaris hasn't moved. If we were migrating to another star, it would have moved over a full degree out of that narrow chute. So all of this is just unsupported, unthought out belief. It's absolute insanity. And then the gravity thing where, there are trillions of tons of water, but I can hold my arms up, right? I can jump in the air. A butterfly can fly. It's absolute insanity. It's just buoyancy and density that hold us to the Earth. And there's also what we call a downward bias. There's energy, free energy that comes from the sky, the positively charged sky, to the negatively charged Earth. Well, the Earth is not moving. It's negatively charged. And anything that's above the Earth has a positive charge around it. And it's to say down is this way. If I had a handful of ping pong balls, marbles, and a helium balloon, and I held it over a pool, and I opened my hand, the balloon's going to go up because it's less dense than the air around it. The ping pong balls and the marbles are going to fall down because they're more dense than the air. The ping pong balls will stay on top of the water because they're less dense than the water, and the marbles will go to the bottom because they're more dense. But down is down. The Earth says, hey, down is this way, and then buoyancy and density sort everything else out. Now, how can we prove this? Well, if you look on, you can Google anti-gravity tinfoil triangle, and basically we get a little triangle of tinfoil, and we hook a wire to it, and we put a negative charge into it, bam, it shoots up into the air and it holds its negative charge. Well, is that defying gravity or is it defying the negative charge of the Earth? And then we did another one where we had we have a Van de Graaff generator which can put a electrical charge into something, and we basically took a wire from that and we tied it to some helium balloons, and we had just like a button on the end of it. And the helium balloons are holding it a couple inches off the floor. It's just at equilibrium there. And then we cranked up the generator and we put a positive, excuse me, a positive charge into the button, and bam, it got heavier and went down to the floor. And then we discharged it, and boom, it went back up again. We're defying electromagnetism. That's what creates our up and down. Now, inside the flat Earth community, there's an argument: is there downward bias, or is it just buoyancy and density? It's a good argument to have. I'm 100% on there is a downward bias. We can prove it. There's so much evidence of it, but it doesn't matter. Either way, we're still trying to figure it out. We know that mass attracting mass is nonsense. If I held a plumb bob next to Mount Everest, it should swing to the side a little bit. According to Neil deGrasse Tyson, the high priest of scientists, he says that the Earth is spinning and the water bulges 14 miles high at the equator. Well, 14 miles high, that's 3 times the height of a cruising altitude of an airplane. Okay. Where is that hill? Where's the best viewing spot of that? Okay. The Earth isn't moving. It's flat and level. Things go down because of buoyancy and density, and the Earth has a negative charge to it. End of story.
We are getting very close to our time here, but if I might ask you briefly, historic given facts, as I said, are starting to crumble for me. Yourself and other researchers across the world are talking more frequently about great resets that have happened throughout our story and those that have gone before. It seems to me that these resets cut out the collective memory of what once was and replace it with a new manufactured future, and, as some suggest, at great loss of life. Could you give us a brief example and talk to us about those resets?
Yeah, so the resets seem to happen every couple hundred years or less. It's pretty crazy. And I believe it was on a Crow episode recently. Was it Saint Germain that said it? That this is the first reset that's being done by the elite and is not a natural cycle. Did you hear that?
Germain, as in the immortal.
Yeah, that is very, very interesting. If you look back, every 100 years there seems to be something that happens. 1920 we had the Spanish flu. Everybody was wearing shame muzzles on their face and getting the thing stuck in their arm. And in 1820 there was cholera. In 1720 there was the Black Plague. Seems like every 100 years something happens, but that might just be the one that they're doing on, the man is doing to maintain a lower population and to dumb down the people so they never challenge their authority. But I believe there's also a cycle. In the 1800s, sometime in the 1800s, there was a mud flood, whether it was worldwide or in sections of the world. Can't prove that, but it wiped out a lot of things. And it's not a theory. You can see the buildings here in New York, everywhere in the world. They're buried. There's so much stuff underground. It's unbelievable. The tunnel systems that are here are insane. Like here in New York City, we have Penn Station. It used to be a Tatarian building, but in the 1960s, they tore it down because it was too expensive to clean. And they built a crappy building instead. Okay, that's ridiculous. There's tunnels that they don't use today. I'm like, wait a minute. In the 1900s, we built all these tunnels, but now we're not using some of them. No, this world, we didn't make this world. We re-inhabited this world. Okay, this world was built. The buildings that were here, Washington, D.C. was built before we got here, before the 1900s, right? And people are like, wait a minute, what? But when you look at this in the app, under the web button, Tataria Mudfloods, hit that button, start watching that stuff. Subscribe to John Levy. If you don't have the app, John Levy, Jon space Levi. Watch a half a dozen of his videos, and then you'll realize, wow, our entire history is a lie. So right now, they're trying to reset the world. They're trying to depopulate the world by 95%. Okay. And if we don't get our heads out of our rear ends and say no, because we can say no, they didn't teach us that in school. If we don't get our heads out of our rear ends and don't say no, then we're saying yes by saying nothing. Right. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm out here. trying to get people to wake up. And, I used to wake people up to all of the other deceptions in the world. They go right back to sleep. When you wake someone up to flat earth, as you are now seeing, you can never let it go. And it's never ending. But it does unplug you from the matrix. It stops fueling the system. And, the best way to find the information with the Google censorship is the app. And I'm not just here to sell apps. You just go to flatearthdave.com. You don't even need to get the app. Just watch some of the videos there, and then you'll want to get the app because it's actually, everyone says it's the only app they use. The funnest app's the only app they use every day. And it's a great tool for waking up other people.
That's us at the top of the hour, David. I've really enjoyed having you on the show. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity and time you gave us today. Before we wrap up, could you inform my listeners where they can connect with you, your podcast, blogs, and any and upcoming events that we should know about? And if there are any final thoughts, please share those also.
Everything can be found at flatearthdave.com. But my interviews, the way most people find my interviews is they go to on the app. If you hit the web button and just hit Flat Earth Dave interviews, every time I do a new interview, it goes on the top of that list. So, at the time you're hearing this video will be at the top of that list in the app. So most of my interviews are with visual images. While I'm talking, I'm able to bring up images. I do prefer, I don't say I prefer, doing an audio interview is better because I'm not occupied pulling up images while I'm talking, and I could actually speak a little clearer. So they both have benefits. So listen to this and then go and watch some of my audio stuff and watch my shorter clips, video clips. You'll start to see how important this is, and it's a life changer. This is your red pill moment. If you think the earth is a globe, ask yourself, why can't I come up with one proof of it? And when you think you have one proof of it, please check the frequently asked questions before you email me because it's in there.
David Weiss, thank you.
Thanks, Simon.
And that was the Flat Earth interview with David Weiss. Firstly, I'm really grateful that David agreed to come on to the show today. He's a very busy man, and as you have heard from the intro, he is very much in demand from radio shows, podcasts, and other media events. Every guest and listener is a big deal for this show, and having David on today and his following was no exception. Where do I stand on the whole Flat Earth discussion? This is not an easy one to wrap up and tell you, yes, it's definitely flat, or no, of course it isn't. David and a lot of you listening here today have researched far more than I have upon this subject. I've listened to David's podcast for quite some time, and the evidence or arguments, or let's call them talking points for and against, are strong. FYI, my comments on the observations of what is pointed out as the space station and the many satellite observations that I supposedly had stand, as I still don't get how they are visible from that distance. No science bombing this podcast, please. This opinion is my own and is based on my experience thus far. The only way I'm going to gravitate one way or another on the Flat Earth debate is to seek those answers for myself. As David said, don't believe him, check the facts. Short of going high up enough into our sky and to see for myself, I only therefore have logic and reasoning to sift through the mass of what's on hand, as does anybody else. I can't tell you in this short post-interview outro that I'm sold. And if this is your first time approaching this very controversial subject, chill, relax, and think about it later. After all, you have the rest of your life to seek the conclusions, if that's what you decide. And that's where I'm at. I've now downloaded the app, and I'll spend time looking into this further as the months glide by. That's all I can say about it right now. It's not my top priority, but certainly on the ongoing list of things to explore and learn more about. I really appreciate the time you've given me today in attending this cast, and I know a lot of you are big fans of David's work, so a big thank you to you for dropping by. So I hope I asked the right questions that you found interesting. If you enjoyed the show, give us a like and consider subscribing also if you'd be so kind. Leave a comment below or send the show an email, theslkpodcast@gmail.com. But either way, please keep them kind. You can find the Slick Podcast on all the usual podcast platforms, as well as YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and our new website, theslkpodcast.com. There are a lot of links in the show notes below that will direct you towards a massive great information and the like supplied by David himself. Check them out and enjoy the journey. Remember though, when approaching the subject of the flat earth or anything that questions your worldview, treat it just like any twisting, turning, dark tunnel. Take a check on where you are. Keep your footing and don't get lost. Just saying. And so, my friends, it's time for me to go. Until next time, be happy, stay safe, and certainly not afraid. Bye.
Slick Podcast. Keeping it real and always keeping it groovy.